aí a seca grande, né? E a gente tem o que fazer, né?
It's dying. The drought is tough. There's nothing to do. It has to die.
A maioria.
Most of the cattle have already died.
Ficou
You
fazer
can't
nada.
do anything.
É, prejuízo grande.
The loss is enormous, especially for the poor people. It's all suffering here. There's no water, no work. Everybody suffers here.
Tudo aqui sofre.
The droughts return each year, as if the land were cursed. The few plants that do force their way to the surface languish for lack of water. The animals suffer, and there are few means available to save them. Most die. The peasants, the poor of this land, also suffer. The absence of water affects everybody. To find it is a struggle, daily. More often than not, the desert wins. There are days without a drop to drink.
We just don't drink water. There's nothing to drink because there's no water. What can we do?
Without water, without food, some turn to hunting wild animals. If they have any luck, they try to sell part of their catch for a little money. Even this does not guarantee a daily meal. Something, anything to fill the stomach.
Our daily lives is a struggle. One day there's food, the next day nothing. There are days in which we have nothing to eat.
Yet the suffering of the people is not just the ill will of nature. Most of the land is in the hands of a few powerful landlords. The peasant community have no access to that land, which could give them the means to combat the need for food, which weighs so heavily on their lives. The landlords will not allow them to enter these lands, even if the land has been abandoned, unworked. Brasilia, seat of government and the Brazilian parliament. Here the destiny of millions of citizens is defined. Governments come and go with every election, but there are members of parliament which remain, government after successive government. Some of these form an integrated group called the rural sector, grouped from different political parties, but beyond their general political perspectives, sharing a common cause, the defense of their personal property and the obstruction of agrarian reform. Osvaldo Coelho is one of the members of the rural sector. He's the longest-standing deputy in the Brazilian parliament, with 7 consecutive mandates to represent the people of his state. Few politicians understand the secrets of power like Coelho. In Brasilia, he's known as a very astute politician. He's from the state of Pernambuco, in Brazil's desolate northeast. Here he's known as the most powerful landlord. With his political and economic power, he's the man who decides who will have water and who will not.
Porque a terra pertence aos políticos, fazendeiros, aos latifundiários que nunca não tem rodeio.
Eu sou de uma família de muito espírito público.
I belong to a family with a great public and humanitarian spirit, very dedicated to work.
Encorajada para o trabalho. Aqui os esforços
The efforts have to be ceaseless.
Esse é o segredo.
That's our
de alguma
secret.
coisa que se faz aqui.
Unflagging effort and a lot of human solidarity and a great humanitarian spirit.
E muito espírito humanitário.
Osvaldo Coelho recognizes he's something more than just a politician, a federal deputy.
Eu sou fazendeiro.
I am a landlord. I have 100 hectares with mango irrigation, 40 hectares with grapes, and I also breed cattle. I take care of my property.
E eu tenho uma criação de gado.
But the interests of Osvaldo Coelho, principal landlord of the region, reach far beyond the mere defense of his land.
O poder dos Coelho, você consiste
The Coelho's power is both economical and political.
e político.
This is an area ruled by traditional politicians.
Além de ser políticos tradicionais,
They have been ruling for over 30 years locally, as well as on the provincial and federal levels in this state. They are also the main businessmen in the region.
Eles também são os principais empresários dessa região.
Here, water means power, and that power is visible everywhere in Petrolina, principal town of the region. On every corner, the political and economic strength of Coelho can be seen. Petrolina is situated on the bountiful river San Fernando. Here, the prosperity is in deep contrast to the misery of the countryside. Coelho has designated the town's administration to his son.
Olha, o deputado Osvaldo Coelho é homem.
Federal Deputy Osvaldo Coelho has politics in his blood.
De muitos ouvidos e poucas palavras.
He's a man of simplicity and of few words. He has dedicated all his life to his parliamentary terms, and he contributed quite a lot to the growth of Petrolina.
Times change, and in what was once a solid scheme of absolute power, a small but important dissident voice is making itself heard.
Nós temos aí hoje, em Petrolina, nós temos aí grupo com
In Petrolina, there's a group that belongs to the same family and the same political party. There's 2 provincial deputies, a federal deputy, a substitute senator, all of them from the same family. In such a poor region, most of the people don't have land, and those who do don't have water. They all depend on the supply of the water truck, and by that means the political control is assured.
Com isso, eles mantêm esse controle.
Dizem que a família Coelho não tem esse nem aquele. Eu vou falar de distante porque eu não vejo ele. Dizem que ele só dá água no povo que vota nele.
Water trucks from Petrolina leave to assist the poor peasant, without which he cannot survive.
Porque as famílias tinham que andar léguas e léguas de distância para
People have to walk for miles in order to get water. So when a water truck comes to your home, promising that it will return every time you need water, you will surely vote even for your worst enemy, because you are aware that the drought will return every year.
Então a água passa a ter papel fundamental nos períodos de eleição.
Osvaldo Coelho has experience which power provides and knows, thanks to this helping hand to the poor, his re-elections are assured.
Eu creio que eu sou admirado pelas
I
minhas
believe
ações.
that I'm admired very much for what I do. I think that my political acts express what people and the community expect me to do. That's why I'm always re-elected. It is a testimony of admiration and prestige.
De admiração e de prestígio.
Aqui no Brasil, havendo tanta terra,
Here in Brazil, we have so much land, but concentrated in very few hands.
não tem uma reforma agrária no Brasil. Da parte
There is no land
do
reform in
governo,
Brazil.
isso não existe.
For the
O governo
government,
até
that
agora,
possibility
pela minha
doesn't
experiência
exist.
de vários anos como bispo diocesano, eu vi que
My experience as a
todos
bishop is
os
that all small
assentamentos
farms where
onde
peasants are now
hoje
producing
Osvaldo está
were obtained,
produzindo alguma
and there are no
Todos,
exceptions
sem exceção
by land
nenhuma.
occupations.
foram conseguidos mediante a ocupação da terra.
É o seguinte, vamos negociar, mas não sai ninguém. Não vai sair ninguém. Não vai
Nós estamos
We are farmers. We want to work. We are not fighting a war.
Ocupar, resistir, produzir. Ocupar, resistir, produzir. Ocupar.
Year after year, drought. Year after year, misery. Year after year, the promises of Osvaldo Coelho. Year after year, no solution to peasants' problems by the Brazilian government. Despite the Brazilian Constitution of 1988 establishing a land reform prospectus, nothing's happened. Obliged by the misery of their situation, the peasants have decided to act. The movement of landless peasants was created. Occupation of unproductive farms was the methodology which gave the movement success. In Pernambuco, the main target of the landless movement is the property of the landlord politicians. Because of their desperation, they decide to occupy the same farm for a third time.
Que todos fiquem, porque esses homens que vêm para cá.
We must all stay, because we shouldn't be afraid of the police or the gunmen that will come.
Porque o medo é que mata nós.
Fear will kill us. Those who are afraid and run are weak and will never survive. Only those who have the courage to resist, they will survive.
Só sobrevive mesmo aquele que tem coragem e resistência.
Os políticos que estão no Congresso, vamos dizer, o Congresso hoje,
Most of the politicians in the Congress are landlords.
a primeira atuação deles
Their
é
main
governar.
concern is to press the government through personal interviews, phone calls, and other ways so as to influence the right person in government or in the Congress.
Agir na pessoa do governo ou
They are a
então
strong
dentro do
group.
próprio Congresso. Eles são grupo forte.
Uma vez já houve uma invasão.
They already
e a
invaded my land.
justiça reclamar.
I went to court and won the case.
Era uma
It was
pequena
only
terra
a
de
small farm of
14
14
hectares.
hectares.
Se a lei diz que existe o direito de propriedade,
If the law
na hora
says
que
that the right
se
of property does
quebra
exist, it's
essa
wrong to
discussão
break the
legal,
law.
tá
A small
errado.
minority
Então,
cannot
uma minoria
break the law.
não pode subverter a lei. Tá certo?
The peasants from the landless movement are afraid of being evicted again by Coelho's police force, as happened on each of the two previous occasions.
Teve o primeiro despejo, teve o segundo.
We were moved out during the first occupation and then a second time, but we stayed together as a group. Now some have abandoned since we started this new move, but we're here again with the hope that someday we will win and get our piece of land, because until now we have never succeeded.
É Jiri que somos vencedor, ganhamos o nosso título, que até hoje não temos.
Estou aqui, seja o que Deus quiser, né?
I'm here because of God's will. We are going to fight with His help so that the government will give us a piece of land to raise our children on.
Para nós trabalhar, para terminar de criar os filhos, né?
This time, however, they know they are not alone. Now there are thousands of families who have decided to resist the suffering of hunger, of daily thirst. Settlements of the landless movement are growing all over the region. Out of their struggle, they have persuaded the federal government to agree, on a case-by-case basis, if these lands, unproductive before being taken over, can be considered for appropriation under the land reform laws. But this is a parliamentary process, by its very nature a long-term affair. Meantime, there is no food, the hunger continues. What can be done?
We are not letting our children starve. We waited for help from the government, but it never comes, so we go and get it on the highway over there. If we stay here, we starve, so I think the best thing to do is to go and get the food that passes by the highway.
Eu vejo chora mulher, chora menino e homem, precisa de fazer saque que é pra não morrer de fome.
The food is on the highway. It is en route in big trucks to feed the rich cities. The decision is taken. A roadblock of the highway is put into action. a new act of plunder begins, just one more in the history of hunger, of misery. At dawn, why not? Spontaneous plundering of supermarkets and food trucks is not a new phenomenon in Pernambuco, in the lands of Coelho. Now, however, as the authorities have become aware these acts are being organized by the Landless Movement, it generates strong controversy. The transport companies talk of robbery and assault. The commercial sector bemoans the repeated loss of goods they suffer. The truck drivers say they're afraid to cross Pernambuco's highways through Coelho's lands. But no alternative exists. In Brasilia, the national government talks of chaos. The peasants control the highway, but with little time on hand and fearing police intervention at any moment, they quickly search just for food. The trucks with foodstuffs are diverted to one of the Landless Movement settlements in the bush. Other vehicles are allowed to continue their journeys.
They're going to take my truck to who knows where in the bush. Where's the police and the army to arrest these people? I've never seen this before. They're taking me into the bush to unload my truck. He's one of them, and two others are already in the cabin.
É só comida, vamos dar. Então não tem não. Calma um pouquinho, calma. Vamos entrar aqui, estão soltando é piada pra gente. Bora, cara, bora, não pode perder tempo não. Bora. Também vai ter piada, então vamos entrar. A gente só quer sorte.
I think it's a shame that the federal government doesn't help these people here. Hunger is a real problem. There are 6,000 people that have been without food for 9 months and the government doesn't provide any help. We are plundering because we need food. This is not an assault, we don't steal money, all we want is food. We plunder because there is hunger, poverty, and unemployment. As long as there are peasants without land and people suffering in the countryside, there will be plunder.
The landless quickly organize unloading food cargoes at the settlement. Later it will be distributed around the movement's other settlements in the region. It's an efficient network for those who have nothing.
I think this is so wrong. It's not correct. People are out of control.
Aí o pessoal também fica tudo descontrolado, um fica gritando os outros também.
Milk is one of the most sought-after products. They are well aware their children are paying a high future price for today's deprivation. The vicious circle of poverty, an apparently unbreakable legacy. The landless will now do anything to obtain food, in spite of a history of patience. They don't care if they are considered as thieves, as highwaymen, possibly stealing from others as poor as themselves. They are finely organized, and with that structure, for the first time ever, feel powerful.
When there is hunger and basic needs are not provided, goods become common property. Then, for St. Thomas of Aquino, private goods do not exist.
Fazer saque de caminhões levando
Under these circumstances, plundering trucks with food and bring that food to people with hunger becomes totally legitimate. For us, that means in no way a scandal.
Isso não constitui escândalo nenhum.
These frequent acts of plunder and the occupation of land affect Coelho's power. Equally, these acts by the landless movement enhance the strength of the peasants. Coelho tries the old demagogue style, which has stood him in such good stead in the past. whilst federal funds from Brasilia go into public works.
Ela é idealizada.
This project is entirely founded and created by my wife. She is the brain behind all this. She takes care of it with a lot of love and solidarity.
Com todo amor, com toda solidariedade.
The situation of instability has repercussions in the National Congress. The government and its rural counterparts are concerned. The political opposition uses the opportunity to criticize both.
These deputies indicate to the government who they want as the Minister of Agriculture, of Land Reform or Economy. In exchange, they vote for the reforms the government needs. They sell their votes for favors from the government. When there are elections, they receive money for their campaigns.
Equally in Pernambuco, Coelho's power is under attack. The local opposition dispute the powers of state government, although this opposition is not one of Coelho's main concerns.
There is a political struggle between his section and the one I am leading. Since 1986, we have been alternating. I condemn this methodology he uses to maintain his public life, which is mostly based on paternalism. If you support him, then you get a job. If you not, you don't. If you support him, you can have access to official services. But if you don't, every door remains closed. But I don't feel very comfortable talking about his character, because although we are political opponents, we are also relatives. He's my uncle. We have to maintain the spirit of struggle we had until now. For our organization, our dynamic approach, and especially because of our conviction that only in the struggle we will conquer the things we need. Congratulations for all of you and for all the people who believed that someday Catalonia could be expropriated.
The Catalonia farm, occupied 2 years ago by the Landless Movement. Now they are celebrating. They slaughtered some cows for the party. For the very first time, a farm which had been the property of a landlord politician has been expropriated by the government and given to the peasants who occupy it.
Especially in this region, which is practically ruled by one family in both the countryside and the towns, the Coelho family, if they feel sad today, then we feel satisfied. This is a huge victory for the landless movement and above all, for land reform.
É o lavrador que dia e noite está atendo, colhendo os alimentos que sustenta esse país.
800 families who suffered through hunger and misery for 2 years of the occupation, guided by one hope that became a reality. Now they are the new owners of this land.
Now I am proud to be a landless with land.
A luta do povo vem de muito longe. A luta do povo Brasil vem de muito longe. A luta do povo vem de muito longe. A luta do povo Brasil vem de muito longe. Dos tempos de Moisés, grande companheiro, Chico Mendes Guevara Zumbi, Antônio Conselheiro, Ernesto Che Guevara Zumbi, Antônio Conselheiro. A luta do povo vem de muito longe. A luta do povo Brasil.